Okay. What up, guys? What up, my finishers? Today, we are doing our first episode. So, I thought it would only be right by introducing you to my longtime friend, Braden. Uh, Braden has a very good opinion on a lot of NFL topics. He also is a big fan of the Patriots. So, I brought him on the show today to talk a little bit about, obviously, that sad ending to that game against the Dolphins. Uh, And I am Casey, your host. I'm a big Bears fan. Uh, Obviously, we had a very good win last night. Very impressive defense. And so we're just going to go ahead and talk about the predictions that we thought might happen before the game. So, Brady, why don't we start off with you and talk about what were your predictions for the Dolphins?
So going into the game, I knew that there was a long history of the Dolphins have been like the kryptonite to Tom Brady and the Patriots, especially at Miami. Going into New England, the Dolphins have been extremely shitty, but at Miami, Patriots have been very bad. So going into there, I was a little bit skeptical, but I was thinking that the Patriots are going to win. That was my prediction for it. And the Patriots were up, obviously, at the end until the Miami Miracle happened and the 69-yard touchdown at the end. So if we want to talk about that, we can get into it. By the way, Casey said my name, but I'm Braden. I'm a huge Pats fan. And I think I've been a fan since like about 2005, 2006 or something like that. So not a bandwagon or any shit like that. Yeah. Uh, so let's just jump right into talking about the Patriots and Dolphins game. So what I noticed most about the game is it was pretty high scoring game, to be honest. It wasn't what I was expecting. I was kind of more expecting a little bit more low scoring, especially by the Patriots side. Usually when they go into Miami, they score more around 20 or maybe 17 points because the Heat usually really gets to them. This time it didn't get to the offense as much. They were moving up and down the field with rapid ease until about the third or fourth quarter in the game when they got into the red zone a couple times and they couldn't finish it off. One time they got into the red zone and they got into fourth down, and Stephen Gostkowski, who had missed an extra point already in that game, had a field goal, and he missed that wide right, so which is very uncharacteristic of him. But he has really struggled this season with kicking for some reason. So that was definitely interesting. And then besides that, they also had to settle for two more field goals once they got in the red zone in the fourth quarter, which could definitely change the game had they gotten touchdowns in the red zone. But what else did you notice, Casey?
So what I noticed was on both sides of the ball, the Dolphins were getting pressure the whole game. I mean, it was actually going back and watching the tape. They had a lot of pressure both sides. New England was getting to Ryan Tannehill, and Miami was getting to Tom Brady. The running game was not as effective.
No, the running
Except,
game was awful.
yeah, the running game was not very good. Miami though has a little bit of a guy you may know as Frank Gore, uh, and he has been actually very impressive this season for being like I don't know 100. Uh, he was piling up yards, receiving. He really impressed me in the game. Going back to Steven Gostowski, I mean those are kicks you have to make. I mean that is your job in the NFL to make those kicks and. Honestly, Tom Brady had a very, very good game. 3 touchdowns, high completion percentage, and to see them lose in that way,
That was
it was
devastating
like
to me.
devastating. Yeah,
Sucked.
yeah,
But
no,
main reason that it was so devastating to me is because going into the game, I knew a lot was on the line because with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, I had been watching the Kansas City game while the Patriots game I was live streaming it, and I was noticing that it was working out perfectly at that time because the Kansas City were down 17-24, and the Patriots were up. Obviously, it turns out that Kansas City won in overtime and the Patriots lost. So, as a Patriots fan, it sucks for me because it had the Patriots won and the Chiefs had lost. Patriots have number one seed, and reason why that's so important for all the people that don't really understand is that throughout the history of New England's dynasty, they get to the Super Bowl and they have a high percentage of winning when they're at home in the playoffs. When they're away, they still have a decent percentage, but it's far lower. An example would be the 2015 season when they had to go to Denver, not Dallas. Dallas hasn't been. Dallas sucks. They went to Denver against Peyton Manning, and it was a close game. Not mind you, like they're always close games. New England's always going to be in the games they're in, but obviously they lost, and Peyton Manning went to the Super Bowl and then won. But yeah, so stuff like that. So that's why it was so important in this game. But besides the offense of New England, the main thing that I really noticed was Bill Belichick. He had a really off game. He's been very good this season. His defense has been great, but he's been really improving them, especially last week against Minnesota. Minnesota, who just acquired Kirk Cousins this year, have really improved their offense actually, and to hold them only to under 200 yards and I think it was 10 points in that game, or was it 14?
I think it was 17.
Was it 17?
Check.
I'm not sure.
It was a low scoring game.
They held them to really low scoring, which was impressive. So I was expecting similar things from the defense. Now, mind you, I knew they'd get gassed, but I thought they would be able to hold them the first half till second half, where they let them loose a little bit more, because usually in the heat, the Patriots struggle a lot. But the Dolphins, they just ran all over them. Frank Gore, as you said, had a massive game. I think overall rushing, they had over 180 yards rushing, which is just unacceptable for a defense in the NFL.
That's bad. And not only that, to add to it, just to add a little side note, Kenyon Drake was the running back that actually scored on the Miami Miracle. So to add to it, it was a running back that actually ended that game, not even a wide receiver.
And Baldwin, former Patriot, he had a 54-yard touchdown in the game too.
Yeah.
So I mean, they had three different guys basically that scored in them and had huge runs against them. So I mean, they just couldn't stop anybody. And I noticed that they were loading the box, like they were playing for the run. They weren't playing for the pass, and they just could not stop them still. So I was definitely interested by that. So if teams could take advantage of that in the future, or it could just be the heat effect, but we'll see next week. But obviously next week they face the Pittsburgh Steelers at Pittsburgh.
That's a cold game.
That will be a huge game because obviously there's a history of the Patriots. Don't mean to brag about that. They kind of own the Pittsburgh Steelers, but yeah, it's kind of been like that in history. This past couple decades. So I'm really interested to see how that game plays out. But any final thoughts on the Patriots Miami game, Casey?
One last thing I thought we should talk about is first off, two things. Bill Belichick, whoever his special teams coordinator is actually a genius. The past couple weeks, their special teams blocking punts has been phenomenal.
Yeah,
they blocked
I agree.
2 this game. They blocked 1 against the Bears for a touchdown. So, and in that Bears game, they also had a kick return touchdown, if I remember right. And so I got to give credit to their special teams that they're doing a phenomenal job. Dante Hightower on the special teams, really doing a good job. And then second off, I think we have to discuss Belichick's plan on the last play of the game there. I personally kind of understand why he did what he did. He put Gronk basically as a safety in the back, towards the back of the end zone, expecting a Hail Mary. But from Miami's position on the field, I don't know if Ryan Tannehill could even throw it close to the end zone. That is almost a 70-yard Hail Mary. Now, if I'm the coach, I understand the logic behind it, just in case it's a Hail Mary. But, I mean, what are your takes? I mean, I personally would have left Gronk on the sideline.
Yeah, I agree with you. From watching other shows on ESPN, like First Take, a lot of other people agree with you too, Casey. Yeah, it just seems like Coach Belichick outcoached himself there. He overthought it. It was the last play of the game, obviously. There were 7 seconds left in the clock, 69 yards to go. And I have watched Patriots a lot, and they do have a common theme of putting Rob Gronkowski or Josh Gordon out there for the Hail Mary to bat it down. But in this situation, I agree with you. There was no need to really do that, considering that he can't throw it that far. So the only way it really comes down to, I mean, it's hindsight's 2020, but the hook and lateral is really the only play that they can do at that point, considering that they have no timeouts, there's 7 seconds left, and they have 69 yards to go, and he can't throw it far enough for a Hail Mary. So I agree. I don't think they should have had Rob Gronkowski, especially in the injured state he's in. He's been really banged up this season. He hasn't been playing like the Gronkowski of old. He had a great game in offense. Obviously not the last play right there, but I agree with you. Like he shouldn't have been in right there. At least keep Devin McCourty, and he's been, I believe he's been the number 2 tackler in the NFL this year, percentage wise. And it just made no sense. I don't understand why he did that, but yeah, I agree with you. So that kind of wraps up the Patriots Miami game. So let's move on to the Bears game and the LA Rams game.
Oh boy! All right. So 15-6, Bears pull out a W against arguably the number 1 team in the NFC. They absolutely demolished the Rams offense that game. If you go back and watch the tape, you'll see the Bears defensive line just terrorize the Rams offensive line. I mean, you had Akeem Hicks, you had Eddie Goldman, you had Khalil Mack, you had Leonard Floyd, and then the secondary was playing lights out. Kyle Fuller has a pick, Prince Amukamara has a pick, and then your inside linebackers making plays all over the field, tackling the running back. Todd Gurley finished the game for a season low 11 carries, 28 yards, and 30 receiving. Wow. That is astounding, considering he may be the best back in football. So, going off of that, the offense, meanwhile, for the Bears was atrocious. Mitchell Trubisky threw 3 picks, threw 1 touchdown to an offensive lineman, backup Bradley Sowell. I mean, yeah, you know, I like the trick plays. I dig it. I think it's cool. Like, you're scoring points. So, I like it. But at the same time, you have these playmakers on your offense. Tariq is just... Then you have Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, and Anthony Mills. All very good at contributing. So, with how our defense was playing and how many chances we were getting on the offensive side of the ball, we should have. But, no, got over there with a win. It was a good win, good defensive performance like the old times instead of this NFL New Age offense where everybody's throwing the ball 400 yards a game. So it was kind of nice to see that. What about you?
Yeah, so I've seen most of the highlights from it, and I have to agree with you that it was a completely defensive game. There was almost no offense by either side. The final score was 15-6, and Yeah, there was just no offense whatsoever from either side. It just seemed it was pretty miraculous, actually, considering there have only been, I think, like one or two other games this entire NFL season that have been like that, like the Dallas New Orleans Saints game with New
Yep.
Orleans Saints at Dallas. That was a really defensive game. But this was just crazy because uh, combined, both quarterbacks threw 7 interceptions. Mitchell Trubisky threw 3 and 1 touchdown. And Jared Goff threw 4 interceptions,
4.
which is
Yeah.
just crazy. And you can tell that both of the quarterbacks were just completely rattled by the opposing defensive lines as they were both being hit, pressured, sacked all night long. Khalil Mack put pressure on a double team and caused a safety on Jared Goff.
Eddie Goldman got the safety. Khalil
Yeah,
Mack. Yeah, no, I know what play you're talking about there, though. Yeah.
yeah. So that was just it was very interesting because unlike other games in the NFL this week that were high scoring, or or like the Patriots game, which wasn't super high scoring, but like a normal
It was
football game.
medium. Yeah, normal.
Yeah, it was just really different, something you don't see a lot in the NFL now. Um, so I thought that was really interesting, and I also thought what was really interesting was, as you said, this trick plays. It seemed like they couldn't get anything going on either side, so both of them were kind of really desperate to get something going, and they were pulling tricks all over the book, and they just didn't seem to be getting them anywhere. So that was something really interesting as well. So I don't know what else you got.
Uh, One last little tidbit is that the Bears. I got to give credit. The one part of the offense that was outstanding this game for the Bears was the holding on to of Aaron Donald. Not holding, but the containment of Aaron Donald. This man has 16 and a half sacks on the season. He has been every bit as dominant as any player in the NFL on defense this year. The Bears did not give up a sack to him. He only had 2 solo tackles and 2 solo tackles, and that's really about it. He did not contribute. And this is against a rookie guard named James Daniel, the Bears drafted in this past April's draft, and he really showed up. I mean, for a 21-year-old kid to show up against arguably the best defensive player in the NFL with 16 and a half sacks is very impressive. The offensive line as a whole did a really good job. There was a couple of miscues, a couple of sacks here, but other than that, they kept it was not a bad game. Going no snap was injured. I thought altogether.
Yeah, I agree. Final thoughts on that game. It was at the Bears, obviously, so it's home. It was really cold. So if they were playing neutral field, who would you take in that game still?
Okay, the neutral field. Whew,
That's a tough question
it's a very loaded question.
because the Rams' offense has been high caliber this season, while the Bears' defense has been
High caliber
obviously
as
lights
well.
out.
Yeah.
And obviously, in this instance, at the Bears in very cold weather, the defense won. But in neutral field, who would take it? In my opinion, I think the Bears would make it very close, but I think the Rams would eventually take it. The only reason why I say that is because the Bears' defense is elite, no questions asked. They would definitely hold the Rams to fewer points. I think it would be a very low-scoring game still, but I don't think that the Bears' offense would be able to keep up. I really don't. Mitchell Trubisky has really struggled this season, except the one game at Tampa, but Tampa has just not played well this other half of the season. So I can't really take that much for Mitchell Trubisky. Obviously, as he continues to improve as quarterback, the Bears team as a whole will improve. But right now, it seems to be a one-dimensional team running the ball. without Mitchell Trubisky being able to throw it that much. Kind of like the Ravens Kansas City game with Lamar Jackson. So any final thoughts on the Bears game?
So going back to what you said about neutral field, I actually have to agree with you. I think the Rams, I think their offense would finally get the best of the Bears, especially not in cold weather. Looking back at even history, the best Bears defenses, the 85 Bears, the ones that won the Super Bowl, that were arguably the best defense of all time, lost at Miami in that hot weather to Dan Marino. And he's in the Hall of Fame now, yes, but everything that went on in that game was a little bit spooky. Even the players nowadays say that. I mean, there was a pass that was deflected off the helmet of the Bears defensive line, and the wide receiver caught it for a touchdown on Miami. That's insane. This year, the Bears went down to Miami and lost to Brock Osweiler in the hot conditions. So, if the Bears go to LA for the playoffs, I personally do not think the Bears can win that. I love their defense. I love both of them. But weather does factor into the NFL game. It is
I agree. I think there's one more game that we should talk about before we wrap things up on our channel, and that'd be the Kansas City-Baltimore game. That game was absolutely insane. And you want to talk about miracles. There was a miracle that happened in Kansas City, let me tell you. What Patrick Mahomes did in the fourth quarter on the last drive of the game, basically, was just incredible. 4th and 9. He rolls out to his right, and he throws it all the way across the field back to Tyreek Hill, who's in between 3 different Baltimore Ravens defenders. And it was incredible because if you notice throughout the game, Tyreek Hill was injured. His right ankle, I believe. I don't know exactly what the injury that happened with it. But something was wrong with his ankle. He was hobbling around the entire game, and he just pushed through it in that moment to get back to that ball. This was a huge test against Baltimore Ravens. So any other thoughts from you, Casey?
Yeah, I thought I would give out a couple statistics. For one, the Chiefs were dominant again, like they've been the whole season. They had a very good offensive showing. So here's some stats. Patrick Mahomes was 35 of 53 for 377, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. That is very impressive for the fact that against the statistical number 1 defense in the NFL of the Baltimore Ravens, 377 yards is a lot for the number 1 defense. And then on the ground, they had Spencer Ware, who is filling in for Kareem Hunt after they lost him for the season, obviously.
I think just final thought in the Kansas City game would be really the as you said, Patrick Mahomes with his amazing stats against the number 1 defense. That was very impressive. It's at home, obviously, but still, it was quite a test. And I think final thoughts on it would be the implications it has in playoffs. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Patriots lost and the Kansas City Chiefs won. This puts the Chiefs 2 games ahead of the Patriots now, and they keep their division lead ahead of the Chargers now as well. So it was obviously a very big game for them to win. And next week is also a very, very big game for them to win. The rest of the season really is a big game for them to win because if they lose 2 games, they could lose. I mean, they only have 3 games left, so it's very interesting to see what happens. They have the Chargers at home next week, and then they have Seattle away at Seattle the next week.
And the Seattle Seahawks are red hot right now.
Yeah, both those games are going to be very, very close and test the Chiefs. If they can pull out the victories in those 2, they're guaranteed a first round. They're guaranteed a bye and home field advantage throughout the playoffs. Throughout history, though, they haven't taken advantage of their home field advantage in the playoffs. So that would be very interesting to see. But obviously, this is a different Kansas City team this year. Patrick Mahomes behind the quarterback position. So that's my final thoughts on this recording.
One last thing I wanted to add before we conclude our show today is this is a personal question, but where do you see the Bears as we head into the postseason? Where do you see them? Let's say that they get the first round. Let's say the season were to finish today. How far do you see this Bears team going in the playoffs?
Well, so right now the Saints and the Rams have the byes. So the Bears, who would they play right now?
I want to say they would play the Redskins. I want to say Redskins currently.
Really?
I would have to check again. Because as I looked,
I know Dallas is number 4. Dallas is number 4 right now.
I'm pretty sure the 3 plays the 6. I'm pretty 3 plays the 6.
3 plays 6 and 4 plays 5.
Yeah. So
and then the next week,
it's either going to be the Redskins or it's going to be Seattle. In that case, or Minnesota. If Minnesota wins against Seattle, this is a big game tonight. If Minnesota wins against Seattle, Minnesota's primed for that wild card spot. Basically, we might as well count the Redskins out right now. Their injuries have piled up too much.
I would count the Redskins out. They're not getting the playoffs this year. And they've lost Alex Smith. They didn't even show up.
Backup. They didn't
even show up against the New York Giants. It was a blowout, which is interesting, very interesting, considering this New York Giants have been very, very crappy this year. They've been awful, and the Redskins to be blown out like that against the Giants is just awful. So I would definitely think that the Bears either play in Seattle or Minnesota. Personally, if I was a Bears fan, I would want to play Minnesota.
I would take Minnesota over Seattle right now.
Seattle, as you said, is red hot right now. I think the Bears would be able to pull off the win against Seattle because they'd have home field. However, it'd be a very, very close game, and it could come down to the last play, which anything could happen then. But right now, as it stands, I would think that Bears would win the first game of the playoffs, and then they travel to the Saints, and they play the Saints.
I know how
that is.
That's a tall task.
That's a tough task. The only reason why I say that is because Dallas beat them. However, it seems hard to beat the Saints at home. The Saints away. That's what I'm saying for the Bears. So right now, I'd say they win the first game and then lose at the Saints. But anything can happen. And those are my closing remarks as for this recording.
Yeah, no, I agree with just about everything you said there. I think the Bears are poised for a second round exit. So they'll make first run, go through it, and then they'll exit second round. Personally, I am no longer afraid of Minnesota. Kirk Cousins has been at best average this season. They paid him to be an elite quarterback. He isn't that this year. He's just not. He has been average at best. He's not. Their offensive line needs help. I've seen that time and time again. Their offensive line has struggled. Their defense is not what we saw last year. That I don't know what happened within that locker room. Some say it is the playoff hangover. I just don't see it. This is for the Minnesota Vikings. Now, Seattle, that's a different case. Seattle is red hot. Their defense is making plays. Their offense is making plays. Their special teams is making plays. So, as a Bears fan, I really do not want to see the Seahawks in the playoffs. They are a scary team right now. They feel like they can contend with anyone. That is.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's going to wrap it up for us here. We're getting into the 33-minute mark here. But thank you all so much for tuning in to our first video. We welcome you humbly, and welcome to the finishers.
Welcome to the finishers, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe and like.